Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am so glad that you guys came over today to see another brand new video. If it's your first time here, welcome. My name is Lacey. I document and make videos every single day about just the journey that I'm on. I felt like I had changed a lot over the past probably a good 7 or 8 years, and I decided that I really wanted to document daily changes because I felt like I didn't live this 24 hours for it not to count for something. And I feel like just little things every day we end up changing, and you look back over time and you notice that you've changed a whole lot over years, but you don't really know those like pinpoint day or time or anything that's happened to you of really why or how you got there. So this was my way to just acknowledge that for myself and just document my journey about what God was doing in my life and how he was using me and how he was pushing me forward for a purpose. And I just wanted to document that and see how I changed over time. So most of the time I just document what God did in my life on that particular day and how I am different than I was 24 hours ago. So it was kind of like a normal day for me. I homeschool my son, so we were doing that, and it took a long time, and there was quite a few things that needed to get done. It was just kind of like a heavy workload today. And then right after that was done, I made dinner for my family, got ready for church, went to Wednesday night service, helped my son with some stuff right before we left. And yeah, it was just kind of a boom, 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 like the day was gone. And I guess I look forward to seeing what God does and what's kind of waiting there for me. So I went and listened to like a sermon, and our services on Wednesday night are a lot of prayer and kind of like half and half, like half prayer and half sermon, which I think is not necessarily a normal ratio actually, but it's kind of long. It's like an hour and a half, but it is so fulfilling. And to hear all these people pray tonight, it was just so humbling. Like, people were just praying about our country and just praying for our leadership, and I just thought that was amazing. I was so humbled in prayer. They were praying for missionaries and people that were affected by different things going on in the world, and I was just praying, and I just felt so humbled inside my heart that it was almost overwhelming. So we've been going through 2 Samuel in our Wednesday night services, and if you know anything about 2 Samuel, like, some of the things aren't very pleasant. I mean, some of the stories just aren't very fun to talk about, but it's stuff that needs to be said. It's stuff that we need to talk about in society and in life. So we were talking about chapter 14, which is after a kind of traumatic chapter 13, where it's like the violation of Tamar, and how David's first son actually kind of like violated her, took advantage of her, and then her brother kind of plotted his death, and it took a really long time. And then even after he kind of like kills the first son, David really kind of didn't do anything about the situation, to me, is what it seems like. He really didn't do anything about the first son and this violation to the daughter, because they were like I guess you could say. David had like a zillion wives, and so this brother Absalom decides to kind of avenge the family and kind of plots the murder of David's first son, Amnon. And it's just kind of this terribly tragic story that happens. And so I was really kind of like, oh my gosh, what's going to be next? And I hadn't read 2 Samuel in a while, so I just hadn't cracked it open to see exactly like what I was in for. And I was really like, oh no, when I started reading it, because it was all about the fact of David really wants to go see this son, Absalom, who killed his other son, almost like understands why he does it, and kind of wants to like reconcile with him and just doesn't. Just doesn't. And it doesn't really say like why or anything like that. In this particular chapter, another guy kind of gets involved. It was like his general guy. He kind of gets involved and he says like to try to show him like, hey, like, why don't we just go get him? They finally go get the son, bring him back to the palace. He says, you can be a part, you can go back to your life, like everything's good. And so he does. And the king still won't see him. So David still won't see him. And it was all about this like reconciliation within family. And the interesting thing that got me thinking today was the fact that the sermon that I was listening to was talking a lot about pride. And it was talking about the fact that Absalom, who murdered his brother, just had a ton of pride and was very, very angry, I would say, at his father because of the fact that, like, they never really, to this point at least in the story, are talking about what happens. And it made me think of that. I've had some revelations in my life about the fact that if you don't speak about things and you just let them go, that's not good. That it just never gets you anywhere. If you just kind of pretend things away, a lot of times like they don't get solved. It's just kind of building hurt upon hurt upon hurt. And today, what really struck me, and I feel like I'm going to struggle with this for probably a while, was that Amnon was really a prideful guy. And he was really angry, I guess you could say. And like prideful to the fact of, they talk about like he had this beautiful hair and he would only cut it like once a year. He had all these beautiful kids. He was really prideful. He asked to like talk to the king, and the king, it doesn't really say that like David refused him. It says that the general that was between David and Absalom, I think his name's Joab, he kept refusing him. So who knows, you know family drama, you never know. And so he actually decided to like burn this man's fields like of barley, which like in that day, like you gotta grow your own food from the seed, right? So like burning somebody's field, like that's a big deal. Like I was kind of like, whoa, I kind of forgot about this. Okay. And I was like, okay, that's not good. And then on the other hand, part of me really understood his anger. Like, I really understand when people don't talk about something and they just want to pretend it doesn't happen, and then they want to talk about it when they're ready. And I think that's a good thing, because I don't think you should have conversations in anger. But I think sometimes, at least in my experience, people who say like, I'm going to talk about it when I'm ready, a lot of times that's just a put off, because I don't want to talk about it at all. So I'm not going to come back to you when I'm ready to talk about it. I just don't want to talk about it at all. I never felt, I don't know how to say it. I never felt so in tune with the villain of the story. I mean, is that awful? That's terrible. I never felt so in tune with like the villain of the story. And if you look at this story, it was like, well, yeah, Dad, you didn't do anything about it, so I did something about it. And now, like, you're okay with it, but you really don't want to talk to me about it, and you really don't want to move on, but you want me to hang out and be close, but you really don't want to talk to me about it, and I'm trying to do everything I can, and you're not getting it. And that would infuriate me. Like, it infuriates me when this happens in my own life, so I can't even imagine on this scale, right? This really just rocked me to my core. The fact that, like, I could understand. The fact that, like, in this tiny little section, I, like, totally understood, like, the villain's point of view. And I was like, does that make me a terrible person? I have no idea. Probably, but I guess the thing that really hit me is that as the sermon went on, he kept talking about pride and how Absalom had so much pride. And the pride is what really, really was hurting him. And so it wasn't the fact that, like, yeah, he was right. It wasn't the fact that, like, it wasn't really like the hurt and the bitterness that was really the problem in this scenario. It was really the fact that his pride was in the way. And he pointed out the fact, he goes, sin and pride have in the exact same spot the letter I. And so sin and pride, the problem with sin and pride is is us, right? And he points out these really good things about pride. When you have so much pride, there's all this stuff that happens. So he was pointing out, I just want to reference my notes because I think it's really important to get it right. But pride delights in the flattery of others. So Absalom loved the fact that he had this like gorgeous hair and that people flattered him and that he knew he was like good looking. You know, that's a prideful thing. Pride disregards others. And so he knew he was good looking and he really disregarded the feelings of others. Like setting fire to this man's field. Like, yeah, he's mad at this man, but he has so much pride that he disregards his feelings and is just like, no, it's okay. He deserves that, or he's driving me crazy, or it's no big deal. He's the general, like they'll just replace his field. No big thing. Like he disregards others. Pride denies the wrongs of others. You have so much pride, you really don't think what you're doing is wrong. Pride demands recognition and acceptance. And that's not saying that we shouldn't be accepting of people in the world. But when you have so much pride in it, it means that you are demanding that others accept you. And you can never demand that. That's such a prideful thing. Like we should be accepting on our own. We should love each other on our own. We don't need to have so much pride within what we're doing to get people to accept us. And pride always displays false humility. So he looked good from the outside, but inside, he still did this awful thing. He still murdered this guy. There was no reason that he needed to murder him. He has just false humility. The sad thing was, I totally fell for the guy. I totally got it. I was like, I think today it was just the fact that God was pointing out this little thing inside myself, like, don't get too prideful. Like, you are not above anything. You are not more humble than anyone. You are not better than anyone. And it doesn't matter what you look like, what you do, where you live, what you drive. You are not better. Like, we are all on a level playing ground, and we have to keep ourselves humble because it is so easy to be prideful. And it is so easy to look at a situation and see that other person's point of view. We really need to humble ourselves in everything we do, because our human flesh will take over. That pride of sin will take over. And you'll look at a situation and think, oh, like he deserves it. It's okay. When that's not the truth. You need to have humility in all situations. And I really think that he's trying just to keep me humble. I think he's trying to tell me, Lacey, like you got to make sure that you're down on the bottom because you don't deserve this. And that's the great thing about what Jesus did for all of us. I deserved all the hurt and the pain. And if you go through life and you sit more on the platform of that, I don't deserve this, and so anything I get is an ultimate blessing, your life is so much better. But when you walk through life with pride and you think like, I'm doing so good, everything's well, then that's where you really get in trouble. If you really think like you have something to be prideful about, I mean, goodness gracious, like we are just all sinners saved from grace, and none of us is better than the other. I tell people all the time, like, I'm not any better than the murderer down the street. And I'm not any better than Absalom in this scenario either. Like, I still have terrible pride that eats away at my soul all the time, and I have to combat and fight through that all the time. And I think it was God making sure he was like, today, like, hey, it doesn't matter how good you felt. It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you do. It really only matters what Jesus did. And we don't deserve any of it. We don't deserve to be forgiven. And so in these situations, when you look at the injustice of society and you look at the injustice of things that happen in your family, you have to look at it through the lens of, I don't deserve any of this, and I am saved by grace, and I need to look at this hurt and pain and make sure that I am forgiving through the lens of the fact that I am a sinner saved by grace, that I am not any better than that person. It's easier to deal with these feelings when you feel humble. And I think God was just reminding me, he must have something in store, right? And I think he was just reminding me, hey, just make sure you know where you're supposed to be. Make sure your heart is in the place that it's supposed to be, because I have stuff coming for you. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I'm so sorry this was probably so long. I hope that these examples of pride in ourselves helped you look inside yourself and be super just introspective and look at your life and hopefully make tiny little changes, which over time will change you into the person that God is wanting you to be all along. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys in my next brand new video. Bye for now.